What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Great Society Show. I am Julian Dorey.
And I'm Joey Deef. How you doing?
How you doing? All right, we're going to get right into it today. Deef and I were just looking at some fucking wild emails, including this baby mama one that involves Peggy Siegal talking with Jeffrey Epstein, and maybe some redactions, Deef?
Yeah, definitely some redactions.
Maybe
but what else is new?
Maybe something in those 3 million files that are still missing?
Yeah. And they had 5,000 emails alone, these two.
Oh, Peggy Siegal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Peggy Siegal's someone that if y'all ain't looked into her before, you should probably look into how connected she is across New York City. I knew of Peggy Siegal like in the tabloids long before I ever knew her connection to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, lady can put a room together. I'll give her that. But
yeah.
What else is going on there, Peggy? What else is going on? So we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're also going to talk about the whoops emails. There's, I believe, 419 mentions of the word whoops that we know of now that you can find on Jmail, which is a copy of what has been released by justice.gov and the Epstein files. The context is weird. That's why we haven't done that topic until now, because there's been claims about it meaning one thing, but it appears to be coded for a lot of other things, including things that maybe Jeffrey Epstein actually isn't involved with, but he maybe suspiciously is aware or can deduce what might have happened in a very...
He's rooting for it,
yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, I see Deef over here just like, oh, he knows. He knows everything. But we're going to talk about that. We, of course, are going to talk about Joe Kent, fan of the show, by the way, Deef.
Fan of the show.
Follows us on all socials. I thought that was interesting. But Joe Kent has really, like, the way that he's addressed this, obviously it's going to be controversial with his resignation and everything, but some of the ways he has framed things that went on around this Iran war and his thinking leading up to it, I thought were very fair and very eye-opening as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on at Kharg Island as well, which is completely ignored by a lot of us, and I think needs a lot more attention because it is potentially you want to talk about like where the boiling point is on this thing potentially getting out of control. It's look no farther than Kharg Island. We will talk about that. And, Deef, we have not talked about our dearest friend to this point very much. He had one mention in the first episode we did in this series, but that's our favorite billionaire, Peter Thiel.
He skated by.
Right? It feels like today's the day he gets his proper attention.
It is Friday.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Petey and his buddy Jeffrey Epstein. Have to say it like that. It does appear the two were close.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They admired each other.
Jeff and Pete.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, Pete admired Jeffrey. I don't think Jeffrey admired Peter very much, but he viewed him as a way in. We will discuss all that, and I got a few other things on Epstein as well, but let's get right into it. First, these baby mama emails, which I mentioned right at the top. So this is a thread from August 2011, which is approximately 8, 9, 10 months after Jeffrey Epstein is officially done with his sweetheart deal of 13 months in prison. Big air quotes there because he went to his office in West Palm Beach every day. But, he's starting to, I guess, put his life back together, if you want to call it that way. I guess that's what you do when you're done in prison. And he is discussing with resident New York socialite PR head honcho Peggy Siegal an interesting proposition about fathering children. And, we talked last week about the Daily Mail report. So that would have been an episode, I guess, 396. But we talked about how they are saying that there was some proof based on notes and testimony from other women that Jeffrey Epstein had said that, quote, this is the mother of my child, referring to a woman. And then there was a picture of him with a woman and a baby, which that one doesn't do as much for me. He could have been standing...
Anybody, yeah.
Right, and these were sick fucks, and who knows what the hell they were even doing there. But when you read some of the notes that were taken of like, yes, he said this is the mother of my child, et cetera, it's certainly interesting because there's a there. Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below. Furthermore, we also know that Epstein had some obsession with eugenics and formulating master race type children. He also had an overinflated ego as to how valuable his DNA was, at least in his mind, and felt like he should inseminate the earth with as many of his gene pool as possible. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. I'm just laughing because it's like it's just so wild.
Yeah, you can inseminate them with more fucked up DNA potentially, and I won't go there with all that. But that is why Zorro Ranch, which we talked about last week in episode 396 as well, and we will continue to talk about, that is why that is really the very, very unoverturned rock, if you will, of this whole story. We always talk about the island. We always talk about New York. We always talk about West Palm Beach. We talk about France, Paris in particular. We talk about London, where he didn't have a place, but Guylaine did. But Zorro is the one that gets ignored, and they do ignore the one out in Ohio, in that New Albany or whatever, that billionaires conclave. That's definitely fair as well. But Zorro is where the potentially very weird shit was happening. Victims describe waking up on surgical tables there, not knowing how they got there, having things probably taken from them in their body. And when Epstein would fantasize, and I hope that's all it turned into, by the way, fantasize about master race prophecies of his own making, it would usually be referring to Zorros where they would do that, which feels straight out of like a very fucked up sidebar, if you will, plot in a Breaking Bad episode that never happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know why I get those vibes, but it's just what I'm picturing in my head. Either way, on this thread, the reason we say we suspect some things are redacted is because this is not a linear back and forth. Am I describing that right, Deef?
Yeah, I'd say so. There's gaps in the communication of replies
where the reply suggests that they had just read a different email and are replying to something new. So where do you want to start with this? At the bottom or the top, Deef?
I think we just start right at the top
because this is in chronological order.
Yeah.
All right, so the first one...
Just a forwarding from Michael Rubenstein.
Okay, Michael Rubenstein, who is a CPA out of White Plains, New York. Fun town, White Plains.
Yeah,
Fun town. Good bar scene.
Yeah, Westchester.
Yeah, good times. All right, so first email, Jeffrey Epstein to Peggy Siegal. Let the accountant and Michaels do everything. You schmooze and find me a baby mama. So this is Jeffrey Epstein explicitly... At first, if you were reading this in a court of law, you might say maybe he's joking, and then you're going to read the rest of this thread and realize, no, he's deadly serious. But this is Jeffrey Epstein asking the preeminent PR fixer in New York City, it's fair to say about Peggy Siegal, probably not anymore now, but she was for years, to find him a baby mama. Fresh out the slammer, Jeff's like trying to lay down this generational whatever. Okay, next email, Jeffrey Epstein. I need great genes, smart, pretty, funny. If you were 50 years younger, whoops, 40. So this is where he uses the term whoops as well, which we're going to talk more about in a few minutes. This we're kind of viewing separately. But there's another joke to Peggy Siegal, who I think we have an article up, Dave. I'll go over that in a minute, where she's finally responded to some of these and claimed, she knew Jeffrey didn't have the best moral compass or whatever. But, when you have a guy who's 9 months out of prison for pedophilia after 43 12 to 14-year-old girls claimed that he had raped them, and you see him joking about you being 40 to 50 years younger, which I believe at the time would have slated Peggy to being a young teenager, maybe less. I feel like you kind of lose your right to joke about that in any capacity whatsoever. Maybe in any capacity, but if you're a convicted pedo, probably shouldn't be doing that. And it should probably set up some red flags if the other person on the other end is actually a decent individual. But it did not. He followed up that email, by the way, before Peggy responded here with a curious 3 words: no Soros types, which I think is basically Jeffrey Epstein saying he thinks George Soros is retarded.
Yeah, I'd assume so.
Yeah. George Soros is a lot of things, evil being at the top of the list right there. Retarded is not one thing I would call him. I'd give him that for sure. Next email, Peggy Siegal. She is Brazilian and an actress. Totally unstable. Listen to me. You need a European intellectual and not an author who will write about you. No show biz trash. Is there an agency for this tall order? Listen to how she describes a potential woman, human being. Trash. She basically is saying, let me translate in their crass language here. Jeffrey, I'm going to find you a cum dumpster who's going to carry your kid for 9 months and then you can discard them. Similarly, similar vibes to how the, new Jalisco cartel fucking discarded all those poor young victims in that insane racket that Kat Schultz broke last year about them basically abducting young pregnant women and taking their children from them by C-sections and then killing them. I mean, that's the same kind of attitude right there. And no, I'm not going to try to see the nuance for someone like this. She means what she says. All right, next email. Okay, go down. That's just them talking biz. All right, here she goes. So she goes, a baby mama. If I wasn't 102, I would take that job in a nanosecond. Peggy wants the sperm of Jeffrey to live on through her. Can I be the anti-mama? Redacted /redacted. I don't know why that would be redacted. I would be excellent at that job. Here is the problem. You have to find someone who will take this as a business deal and not get crazy emotional. A top girl will want a real relationship with the father. A girl who wants a certain life that can't get any other way is a candidate, but must be stable like a rock looking. So they're looking for someone who will be cooperative, who they don't have any respect for, but has some genes that they desire. Very
wild.
Strange way these people think, obviously.
Yeah.
I am thinking, she goes back to the European thing in the next email. I'm thinking this is a position for a European who understands the mistress, in this case, baby mama mentality. You need someone young without much of a career, maybe a professional student, someone who is kept and can keep going to school, getting all sorts of degrees, also doesn't have much of a family herself because they don't want any fucking problems. They don't want them to have any rock to lean on. This is them psychologically, I mean, literally, they're obviously discussing psychology here, but they're psychologically profiling a target, a victim, if you will. The last thing you want is in-laws. Ha! A wannabe socialite is not the way to go. Looking and looking. XOXO peg. Keep going.
That's it.
That's it right there. So there's some missing from Jeff in there. But that is... Again, when you start to put together the context of Jeffrey Epstein potentially having kids out there, and you see active discussions like this that also would then start, this is 2011, would start to line up with similar timelines of like what the witness in the Daily Mail talked about, which those conversations occurred in the mid-2010s or something like that. You start to wonder, okay, there's obviously a there, but is the there what we thinking? Like they finished the job and he actually did have a kid, or dare I say many kids. And again, I reiterated this in episode 396. I'm going to reiterate this again. As this progresses and we find more evidence or whatever, if that is the case, it's going to be really, really important on the public, starting with me, all you listening out there, to not try to get into identities. It's completely unfair to any innocent kids that would be harmed by that. It's not their fault if Jeffrey Epstein went through with something like this, obviously. As you know, this winter was a particularly tough one. I don't know if it's over either, Dave. That's kind of a problem. But a lot of snow coming down, a lot of places I still had to walk, and a lot of times I didn't have to think before I went out because I had my hollow socks. We all know how useless regular socks can be. When it's cold, your feet are freezing. And when it's warm, they heat up and your feet turn clammy. Whether they're synthetic fibers, cotton, or even wool, the regular ones never hold up to their promises. But luckily, as I already told you, hollow socks does. Hollow socks are premium alpaca socks, built for both cold and warm weather, long days on your feet, and everything in between. Their ultra-soft baby alpaca fiber gives your feet a how is this legal level of comfort. And somehow these things are also thermo-regulating, moisture-managing, very durable, and odorless. The alpaca fibers they're made with make bacterial growth very difficult, which reduces the root cause of most foot odor. You're gonna find that hollow socks are buttery soft, not scratchy, and they flex easily without getting floppy. You can wear them for pretty much anything. On the job, yard work, tailgates, hiking, camping, traveling, cold offices, early morning dog walks, or trudging through the snow. For a limited time, Hollow Socks is having a buy two, get two free sale. All you gotta do is head to hollowsocks.com today, that link is in my description below, to check it out. That's hollowsocks.com for up to 50% off your order. After you purchase, they're gonna ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them I sent you. So this was the article I mentioned about Peggy Siegal. This is from March 16th, 2026, so 5 days ago. Peggy Siegal admits she knew Jeffrey Epstein was, quote, morally compromised, but continued to help him gain access to elite social circles. Hollywood power broker Peggy Siegal saw her career unravel after her ties to Epstein came under scrutiny following his 2019 arrest on sex trafficking charges. Roughly 5,000 emails between Siegal and Epstein sent between 2009 and 2019 were released by the DOJ earlier this year. The correspondence between Siegal, who has represented clients like Steven Spielberg, Harvey Weinstein, and Barry Levinson, shed new light on the pair's seemingly symbiotic relationship. Siegal opened up about what she gained from her association with Epstein. The revelations offer a closer look at the Hollywood publicist's role in Epstein's social orbit. Go down. All right. So he gifted Peggy Siegal $100,000 for her 70th birthday in 2017, roughly 2 years before he was arrested and charged with sex trafficking minors. I had no problem taking his money, she told New York Magazine. He had lots of it. Siegal laid out her plans on how she was hoping to spend the money in an email to Epstein. $30,000 was set aside for a birthday party she wanted to host in Southampton with 70 guests.
That sounds like what she was referring to in those emails.
Yes.
With the billings and the invoices.
That's a good point. I think I also saw pictures of this party years ago online, like on a blog or something. That very one in Southampton. 30 grand for your birthday. It's, you know, Trump change, I guess. Another $15,000 was to be donated to Elton John's AIDS Foundation so she could attend a party at his house in June. She wanted to buy access. Gotta love it. Siegal also revealed she'd used some of the huge sum to supplement her apartment renovation as she was looking for temporary fix while she waited for an amazing brown and beige leopard rug that is wall-to-wall carpeting for my whole apartment and being made in France. When the apartment gets done, you're my first visitor, she wrote at the time. Helped Epstein regain access to elite social circles. So this is actually, before I get to this, one of the ones I had heard of before was Epstein's initial welcome home dinner, getting out of college in December 2010 that occurred at his New York City mansion that I believe included Prince Andrew, I want to say George Stephanopoulos, Katie Couric. I'm going to stop there because I can't remember the other names. It was put together by Siegal. So she put together this crew of eclectic, you know, elitist types. And Jeffrey Epstein was welcomed home from his, you know, 13-month pedophile conviction.
That's
whatever.
crazy.
But while Peggy Siegal claims she never went to Jeffrey Epstein's island or traveled on his plane, the Hollywood publicist helped the disgraced millionaire regain access to elite social circles following his time behind bars in the 2000s. Siegal got Epstein invited to the 2013 Met Gala. That's nice. And helped him gain access to dinners alongside A-list names such as Martha Stewart, Lorne Michaels, and Google CEO Eric Schmidt. She also routinely added him to screening lists and occasionally brought him herself. A close associate of Siegal's claimed the publicist became the linchpin for Epstein's social life. So she was rebuilding him by getting him around people. And this is enough in this article. I don't need to hear from this.
Well, one thing I do want you to see is that what she had to say about him in this interview. Just because you just read those emails and they look so suspect.
Hit it. What did she say?
Here.
Go ahead.
Peggy Siegal admitted she wasn't oblivious to the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was morally compromised and a con man. I was in denial, but if I tell you that he told me he changed his ways, then that's telling you I knew that he was a pervert, she told New York Magazine. I mean, obviously I had a sense that he had done something wrong if he had gone to jail, Siegal added. I wasn't oblivious that he was a morally compromised and a con man. But I don't know how to say this to you. The idea of child pornography is so heinous that you can't even think about it. You can't even discuss it. I know it sounds crazy, but it's nothing I wanted to deal with.
All right, I don't buy her.
Me either. That's my point.
Yeah.
Like in those emails, they're just talking about it like it's so fine and like it's just weird. I don't buy that for shit.
Specifically the line though, I wasn't oblivious that he was morally compromised and a con man. You don't deal, forget the morally compromised part.
Yeah, it's like, come
you
on.
don't deal with a con man and talk to him the way she's talking to him there.
Exactly.
I know she's a professional smoozer for a living. Doesn't matter. You'll be my first guest at the appointment. Fuck you.
You need someone who has no aspirations that we could just send to college and keep getting degree. Like, come on.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. This is kind of my takeaway on Peggy Siegal. Because we have to look at all these different people who are in the power parts of society now as potential suspects of a greater scheme, which of course involves intelligence and things like that, things that maybe are even above intelligence as we think about it. Either she is the most talented at her job, oblivious, useful idiot ever, or she's in on something. Meaning working with some agency in some way, because Peggy Siegal, she was the woman in New York City. You wanted to get something done, get people important in a room, that's who you went to. So she's not dumb. And she damn well wasn't sitting there with a con man and exchanging 5,000 emails with him. Yes, his money's green. Okay.
Yeah.
She's not going through that kind of effort and having that kind of schmoozability. Sorry. It's not happening.
I agree.
She's too busy of a person. She knows a lot of people with a lot of money. She don't need to deal with just him. So that's a good find, Dean.
And knows enough people with money that no one chirped into her ear.
Crazy.
Like, come on.
It's crazy.
Anyway.
Let's go to those whoops emails, because you saw there was a whoops in here. And what I have been saying earlier, referring to the whoops, is that when people first saw some of these emails, which we're going to pull up some of the ones that have been seen online as well, it appeared to be code for killing, straight up, where Epstein would be saying it in a way as if he knew that was going to happen, or even worse, he was maybe actively a part of it. So this was a famous email that went around. Can we make this bigger, Deep?
Yeah, and this is an example of one of those.
Mario Nawfal pointed this one out online. But on June 30th, 2014, C wrote, and I believe they were redacted, right? Who that was?
Yep.
I give you permission to kill him. With he is lied apparently to you and he lied to me. To which Epstein replies immediately. Wow, he replied like the same minute. On June 30th, 2014 at 2:59 p.m. He replied to that email on June 30th, 2014 at 2:59 p.m. Whoops.
Yep.
Like, okay, that's a go. And we don't know who that is. No one will lie to you and get away with it from me. No one. Whoops is correct. That's the next email sent from Redacted to Jeffrey Epstein, where they recognized the term whoops. Now, let me play devil's advocate. Maybe they're just seeing the slang he used there, like whoops, and saying like, you damn right you fuck with the wrong guy, rather than actually like talking in code. That's possible. But he has some sort of affinity. I won't even use the word code yet, because you're going to see there's different contexts of it. But he has a strange affinity with the word whoops. And you know what I haven't thought about yet, Deep? I haven't thought about normal things, like in your life or my life, obviously not referring to evil shit, but, you know, like normal types of things where you might have a word that you use to like refer to it. Like, here's a funny one. Like when you say biz, referring to like people putting business or money over anything else in the situation. And it's like a joke.
Yeah.
It could be that is all Jeffrey Epstein's doing. That's possible.
It's possible.
This, I can tell you of everything I've looked at in a court of law, this whoops thing, if you like created a bunch of charges around that and put it in a court, you wouldn't be able to convict them.
Yeah, it seems more like his catchphrase.
Yes.
I'm realizing.
Yeah, but let's keep going on these because the context is certainly sinister. Which one do you want to go to next?
That's what I wanted to ask. Let's
do the RFK one.
All right, yeah, I was going to say.
So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, had like 11 to 13 contacts in the black book with Jeffrey Epstein, like under his name, his former wife, who is deceased, committed suicide. That is the story. When she did that, Jeffrey Epstein received an email at 1:17 a.m. on May 17th, 2012 from Eva Dubin, his first name's Glenn, right? Glenn Dubin? Yes. Glenn Dubin's wife, the billionaire's wife. We're going to have to do a full thing on these two because, there's a lot of history there and a lot of dark shit. But Eva Dubin sends Jeffrey Epstein an email where she says, Mary Kennedy found dead in her backyard, ... Epstein replies, so that was May 17th at 1:17 a.m. Mm-hmm. Epstein replies May 16th at, I'm going to get to why, at 11:41 p.m. I'm guessing that means Eva is overseas. I don't know the context there, and he's in New York. That's my guess. But he replies immediately, or I don't know if that's immediately, but he replies. It would be
like 30 minutes later, yeah.
30 minutes later, if she's in Britain. If she's in Italy, it's an hour and a half later. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. But he replies, whoops. Weird that she's doing that in the middle of the night. Maybe not. Maybe because they knew them well and it's a power family and she's like, whoa. Possible. But certainly weird. What else do we have? How many more do we have there, Deef?
We got...
Oh, yeah. Let's do this
like
one.
5 or 6 of them.
Okay, so this one from January 20th, 2017. Redacted. Again, why are we redacting people who say shit like this?
Yeah, it's so
Turns out Ornella was raped when she was 18. Anna just told me today. Epstein replies, whoops. Like, that's just sick. That one, again, when I talk about, like, it doesn't seem like it's always code or maybe isn't code at all, that one doesn't seem code. That just seems like his making light or joking of really, really dark shit. I think there was another one talking about a girl, and he said, like, dress up as something. Mm-hmm. Is that the one you're pulling up?
Yeah.
All right, so this is, again, redacted. Jeffrey Epstein to redacted in July 2011. Redacted, and they're redacting the name of the victim, which they should redact that. Redacted said she felt God's presence next to her when she was in bed. She knows that Jesus watches over her, and he helped save her life. Whoops. And then redacted responds to Jeffrey Epstein, you should dress up as him when you see her.
What the fuck?
They think...
Like, what is that supposed to
whether that's an underage girl or an of-age girl, doesn't matter. Like, they just view them, not that this is news to any of us, they view them as total trash. And they think it's funny. Next one, there's another one, just go up. That's all the way up. Elkman died. Someone says that to Epstein. It's redacted. Epstein replies, whoops. This is in May 2015. He replies, whoops, 26 minutes later. And then another guy, I guess there's a couple people on the email, says, he was the godfather of my daughter. Can you imagine? Epstein goes, how do you feel about it? And then another person says, well, angry and sad. He ruined a great friendship that had a lot of laughs at first I ever had. A lot of laughs. The first time I ever had a girl with satin sheets was a girl he fixed me up with. Epstein asked if he was medicated. Other guy says, I don't know. I called him 2 months ago and he did not return the call. Not sure I would be welcome at the memorial next Tuesday at 3:30 Campbell, whatever that means. You want to do the Ruemmler one?
Yeah, and Mendelsohn.
Oh, let's do Mendelsohn first because that's shorter. The Ruemmler one's wild. The Ruemmler one, wait till you hear this. But Mendelsohn, the disgraced British political fixer, says to Epstein in March 2010, I think Epstein's still in prison. I think he's still in prison. That's March 2010, but this is when he's at his office in West Palm Beach because he was allowed out of there for 12 hours a day.
Ah, yes.
Mandelson says,
that makes sense.
I have had a very bad setback with capital R who has somehow got into my texts. Now, Deef and I could not figure out who R was. We only spent a few minutes on this, but in the comments, maybe people can help as we get context here. Mandelson, 10 minutes later, without a reply from Epstein, follows up, what shall I do? You may need to help. How does he see them? So he's referring, R is a person, and he's asking, how does R see them? Epstein replies 5 hours later, or, yeah, no, it was 5 hours later, and he almost, this is like personal, like it's serious. He addresses them by name. He doesn't do this a lot. Peter, comma, I'm sure would love to see number 10. Now, what I took that as is a reference to 10 Downing Street, where the Prime Minister resides in Britain, which is the political center of the country, and a place that a guy like Mandelson would have had a lot of access. So he says, Peter, I'm sure would love to see number 10. Epstein then follows that up 9 minutes later. Whoops. 2 exclamation points. Follows it up again 7 minutes later. This email is probably compromised as well. Let's talk. And then Mandelson replies 26 minutes later, thanks, ... good to talk. So he's realizing in real time, Epstein, that someone's actually looking at these emails, which puts all the other emails in question, by the way. They never seem to be worried about people looking at the other emails. I would think if someone could see these emails, they could get into his. And he never seemed worried about it. So this is a weird one.
It's weird.
It again, like when we were looking at the whoops at first, we were looking at it in the context of him being aware of or complicit to or understanding the context of like a murder. And what we're finding is that we found a bunch of emails where they're talking in about some other things that are coded or sinister or insert blank here. And he's using it and it's opening up a whole bunch of other rabbit holes.
This one, though.
Which leads us to Deep's best find. This is fucking crazy. So this is from September 2014 with Kathy Ruemmler, and there's a lot of back and forth here, and we're going to go through it because Kathy Ruemmler was the attorney in Obama's White House, and she was like a fixer in a way. And she had, 11,000 emails with him, 11,500 emails with Jeffrey Epstein. She would call him Jeffrey Darling, I think, and things like that. And until a month ago, when this final tranche, hopefully not the final, but what is currently the final tranche, came out, she was still the fucking chief counsel at Goldman Sachs. And her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein has been public for years. So why the fuck Goldman let her stay there? I don't know. I got to talk to one of my guys at Goldman who maybe knows something about that, but like, what the fuck, guys? Like, and again, it's another example of the hubris of these people from this class of society who think they're so above you that they don't resign. Pull up Howard Lutnick's Twitter real fast just so I can pick on him for a second. Fucking scumbag put up another tweet the other day, which also, like, Elon, what are you doing? So he put up a tweet, a bunch of pictures that looked like he was fucking posing for Instagram. Right here.
This one?
Great spending time with the world's greatest innovators. They are all right here in the United States. America leads in innovation and entrepreneurship always. He does this really like fucking, I don't even know what that is. You know, like shit-eating grin smile, like look at me. I don't know. I really dislike this guy, so I'm certainly just biased against I'm biased against the air he fucking breathes around there. But go back to that real quick, Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ah, you're good. Old Howie.
Go back to the first picture with Elon. What are you doing? Elon, what are you doing? You know this guy's a lying fraud. You know he went to the island. You know he took all his kids there. You know he lied about it on camera with a fucking disgusting concocted story. You know he was neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein forever. You know he went in front of Congress, admitted he lied, and pretended nothing happened and went right the fuck back to working for the President of the United States. And you know he hasn't resigned, and you know everyone hates him. Why are you getting I'm not even saying you wanted to get the picture. Why are you getting a picture with him? Why are you a party to his online fucking personal brand? Like, be smarter than that, dude. You're a fucking genius. You're a trillionaire. Be smarter. All right, go back to the fucking Ruemmler email. These people, Deef.
I know.
These people. You got more patience than me, Deef.
Do I?
You do.
If I let her rip, then who would work the board?
When it comes to these people, you do. All right, so again, this is September 2014 with Kathy Ruemmler. Jeffrey Epstein, you need to talk to boss. And I'm going to tell you immediately that is referring to Obama when you see these emails back and forth. Ruemmler says, agreed, but I need to be prepared to say yes before I talk to him. Don't know what that means. Epstein, understood. It comes down to high risk / reward / low risk. Reward, professional, emotional, and financial. So they're trying to convince him to do something or convince him to not have her to do something because she said, like, I need to be prepared to say yes. Ruemmler, most girls do not have to worry about this crap. Again, you see, like, they're very conversational, buddy, you know, like, tongue-in-cheek. Epstein, girls, puts that in quotes. Careful. I will renew an old habit. This week, Thiel, Summers, Bill Burns, Gordon Brown, Jaglin, Council of Europe and Nobel Chairman, Mongolia Press, Hardeep Puree, India, Boris Gates, referring to Bill Gates, like his guy, Jabor, Qatar, Sultan, Dubai, Coslin, Harvard, Leon Black, Woody. You are a welcome guest at any. So he's referring to all his meetings that week, and that is a who's fucking who, obviously, no pun intended. Also, if you think there are interesting people in town, everyone here for Climate Summit, Clinton, Security Council. Holy shit, I'm on redacted for next 30 minutes. The fact that he says at the front of that email, girls, careful, I will renew an old habit to a woman, no less, to anyone, to anyone.
Yeah.
But to a woman working in the White House in one of the highest positions, talking, I mean, it's not a secret. It's open.
It's OD.
Let's go to the next email. Kathy Ruemmler. Unfazed. Doesn't look like you are prioritizing your schedule very effectively. So she totally ignores that reference. But she saw it, like we all did. How are you going to manage all that? This is Ungo week, so the boss will be in town too. I'll be here all week. You may get sick of me. Just sat down on the train, so can't talk freely. Wouldn't want to talk to a pedophile on a train and have people be poking around on that. Train? Epstein replies, yes. I will be like the emergency room doctor at Lenox Hill. Put that crazy in room 1, gunshot in surgery, and the quote, cook, unquote. Well, he can wait. I don't know what the fuck that means, but that's just weird. She says, yes, trains exist. People ride them to get from one place to another. Germ factories, however, D.C. today, back in New York on Sunday morning. Reed's guy went down on all 7 counts. That's the next email. So she follows up 7 hours later. It's on the same thread. She goes, Reed's guy went down on all 7 counts. I don't know if this refers to Reid Hoffman, but this is from September 19th, 2014, so maybe some sleuths out there can Google around Reid Hoffman, friend, convicted, 7 counts. Maybe we can actually do it right now, Thief. See if we can find that. But Epstein replies, and that's after turning down misdemeanors, which, you know, he has some experience with this, obviously, at this point. Whoops, there it is. So then she goes, yep, and now he is a repeat offender. I mean, this is... she's talking about this like this was a guy they were trying to keep around. And now, well, he really fucked himself because he's a repeat offender. Sounds like it's someone you shouldn't have been associated with after the first offense, or maybe before that. But he goes Epstein replies double whoops at the repeat offender. Go down. Ruemmler goes, yeah, we will now go through a period of self-reflection and despair, to which Epstein replies, Reed or governor. Ruemmler then said, this gets weird. I don't know what governor he's referring to, but she says, Gov is not Jewish. He then says, of course not. He wouldn't have been so stupid. Ruemmler replies, correct. One time, maybe. Twice, no way. Meaning, don't worry about being convicted of rape and stuff like that. Just don't get caught. That's what she's saying. Again, lead attorney for the White House. Epstein, free now. I guess telling her that he's free to talk. Ruemmler says, I think I should do it. Epstein says, let's see how you feel Sunday. So that's, again, referring to that meeting with the boss. She says, good advice. She then says, I don't want to give up my apartment in New York. Keep going. Epstein says, no need to. Call Eric and get a data point. Keep going. I will. The rent on the apartment is significantly more than the monthly salary, referring to hers. Epstein says, how much and who pays now? Ruemmler says, I have so much more info to tell you on Sunday. Epstein says, decision, easier, harder, more complex, referring to that same thing they were talking about at the front. Ruemmler said, and I guess this is after she had that meeting, both harder and easier. He was there because this is now at 8:30 that night. So they've been talking throughout the day and having hours-long breaks while they're doing shit in the middle. Epstein goes, I assume that means harder to say no, easier to say yes. Ruemmler says, harder to say no for sure. Epstein says, try to get a good night's sleep. See you Sunday. Ruemmler says, I will try, and then sends him an email in the middle of the night. Did you read David Brooks today? Okay, referring to the New York Times columnist, David Brooks. He is such a close advisor to her. He's also floating the whole, when they're talking about her salary, she's a government employee at the time, so this is going to get, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, Dave, maybe I'm going to mess up my legalese, but if she's on a government salary and can't afford the rent and she's telling that to him, is that a suggestion of like, hey, maybe you can help me out there, which I think is illegal?
Well, yeah, of course.
That's illegal, right?
Yeah.
Because she's not an elected official. She's someone that works in government.
Yeah,
That's the only reason
yeah.
I'm asking.
For sure. I'm just smiling because I'm like, yeah, on top of the barrage of illegal shit going on.
Dude, they're talking about a rapist and basically saying it's a shame he got caught instead of like it's a shame he's a rapist. I think that's what the context was. Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like that was a context of rape charges, who's seemingly related in some way to Reid Hoffman, but we only have a Reid there, so it could be a different Reid. Have to say that. But he's also clearly advising her on high-level White House things. If the boss is not Obama himself, which it really appears it is, that would be my best guess. It's someone very high up in the White House, because she was extremely high up in the White House. And he's just openly, they're talking on a regular fucking email server.
It's crazy. About
serious shit, and that one was certainly a little coded as well. But the whoops thing is weird. It's not a convictable kind of thing in a court of law, but it is weird, and it is certainly sinister. All right, Deef, real quick, I got to run to the bathroom. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk Joe Kent and get back to some Epstein stuff after that as well, but we got to talk Joe Kent, Iran, and Kharg Island. All right, we're back. So one of the big news points this week was Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigning from the administration and doing so in a resignation letter that he published to his Twitter, that on his Twitter alone has over 100 million views. And when you count screenshots that were posted all over the internet, I mean, this thing has been viewed all over the world because, to state the obvious here, the timing of such a resignation is quite interesting, given that we are in the midst of an Iran war that at any moment could, no pun intended, explode into something far, far worse. I will say this is definitely the most concerned I have ever personally been at global chaos in my lifetime. Even with COVID, you know, I didn't have anything to base this off of because I was the farthest thing from a doctor or a virologist. I remember when that happened in my head, even then, like at the very beginning when we knew nothing, I just had the idea that like, all right, this is not good. You know, some people are going to die, which is tragic, but we're going to get through this. Like this is going to be all right. This is actually something that, you know, crazy to talk like this now with it, but it's something that could unite the world maybe. I don't think I was very right about that. But, you know, it didn't feel like a world ender to me. And I'm not saying right now that this is a world ender. What I am saying is things that I have previously in my lifetime taken for granted, such as the use of nuclear weapons and a domino scenario potential with that. You know, maybe there have been some closer calls in my lifetime. Obviously, there were certainly close calls in the 60s that we know of and even the 50s. But like maybe there have been some times where I could have been thinking about that or that we never knew about. But as far as like having it in your conscious and being a regular citizen and thinking about this at my house right now, like, or at my apartment, like wondering what this could be, it is actually a thought. And that's not to be a fearmonger or anything like that. I would like to think cooler heads will end up prevailing here because, as we're going to talk about with some context, this might be one scenario where the dollar sign always running fucking people's opinions might not be the worst thing in the world. You know, that is what these fucking people who make these decisions in back rooms respond to. And so maybe that will help. But when you have a guy at as high of a position as Joe Kent, who is, I believe, an 11 tour of duty Green Beret, Special Forces guy. Was he Green Beret or Army Ranger? I just blanked out. I want to make sure I get that right.
Green Beret.
Yeah, he was a Green Beret, who also, you know, Green Berets do this a lot. Like they'll end up working with CIA on the ground because they're known as being excellent at making relationships with people on the ground. We've had Johnny motherfucking Glenn, that is his nickname, in here to talk about that in episode 300 and I believe 304, where, you know, he was a longtime Green Beret and he talks a lot about like their skill set and what they're known for there in that department. So you got a guy who has seen basically the entire global war on terror. That was his era. His own wife, he's a Gold Star husband. His first wife was killed in Syria as a part of the global war on terror. This is a guy who understands from a first-person perspective in every possible way what this looks like over there and what the domino effects are, to use that term once again, and what the implications are. And when you have him, who was a very, very confident, excited endorser of the current administration prior to them winning the election in 2024, when you have him so publicly stepping down at such a critical moment like this and then going out of his way to immediately begin the media tour. At the time of this recording, he's already talked with Tucker Carlson. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Our friend Scott Horton, as well as Crystal and Sagar. I think there were one or two others he did, and he's going to do Sean Ryan on Monday, a couple days after this comes out. So, like, he's going out there. He talked at, a Catholic prayer breakfast this morning. I'm going to play some of that video in a little bit. Like, he's going on a tour to get the word out and I guess stand up for what he believes in. And there's always going to be people who see this another way, think it's suspicious, think he has an agenda, he's looking for attention, stuff like that. I don't know. I need to see it play out. But what I can tell you is I listened to the entire 2 hours he did with Tucker Carlson the other night, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought Joe Kent came across as a measured, principled, calm, collected, in some ways anti-drama, fact-based, evidence-based individual. Does that mean he's right about everything? No. But he did not come across in any way to me as a liar, someone just looking to scream at the top of his lungs and you know, get everyone panicking like crazy, even though what he is talking about here certainly has high stakes. That's why he allegedly, like, why he left the office. But Moreover, and I'm gonna get to his letter in a minute for people who have not had a chance to read it. We should go through that. Moreover, though, his letter, which I will read again, was very critical of the influence of the Israel lobby in prosecuting this war and, in his opinion, pulling us into the war. So a lot of people, especially on that issue, it gets very controversial. People online are, the people who support Israel and the people who are against Israel fucking go at each other all day. And I certainly have my problems with their government right now, and I've been clear about that. And the actions they've taken in Gaza, which is a genocide, I've also been very clear about that. Like, you have to call things what they are. Doesn't matter if they're someone who's listed as an ally of the United States, which I don't think they're a good ally at all. I could go into that all day. We're also talking about a guy who worked for them, who's a fucking serial rapist, sex trafficker, arms dealer, insert blank here, and Jeffrey Epstein. So that's a whole separate rabbit hole. But you would have thought he would have gone on to Tucker Carlson's show, especially Tucker, who's a friend of his, who is very critical of Israel. I think righteously so in a lot of ways, but certainly will go really, really far with some of those opinions. You would think Joe Kent was going to come out and just be like, yo, fuck Israel, fam, and just go guns blazing. He managed to, while being critical of the Israeli lobby influence and being critical of some of the intelligence sharing that goes on there, and being intelligence sharing, a huge air quotes, and being critical of their role in decisions being made, and being critical of the influence they may have on the White House, he managed to do it in a very sober, calm, educated, professorial way. More so than even Jeffrey Sachs, who I like a lot, who literally is a professor at Columbia. Like, very, very fact-based. And he probably even would have pissed off a lot of the anti-Israel crowd by putting himself in their shoes multiple times throughout the interview. He used phrases, and I'm paraphrasing here because I want to make sure I don't get it wrong because I don't have it in front of me. But he would use phrases along the lines of, now, if I were Israel, I would see it this way too. Or I would look at Iran this way too. Or they have every right to look at Iran this way as it relates to them. He wasn't just going in there as I think the crowd that hates him, the very pro-Israel crowd, would have wanted him to, which was throwing his middle fingers up and saying, fuck them. He was doing it in a dignified, like he was putting his points out there in a dignified way that also saw some things strategically from their perspective, while juxtaposing that with the perspective of the United States and the United States government, which is elected by us and tasked with advancing our interests in the world, and also tasked with carrying out the promises that any administration would have made on the campaign trail, which they're not doing with this war, to be very clear. And we covered it in episode 393 when I had the monologue at the end of that, where you have the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, both huge fucking longtime AIPAC donor receivees, by the way. You had them both on the same day at separate press conferences a couple weeks ago admit out loud that the U.S. got into the war because they knew Israel was going to attack, and therefore they were going to get blowback. So to minimize casualties, make less, they felt like they had to get involved in the war, which means Israel was dictating what was going on here. And I remind you, this is a country that receives billions of dollars in funding from us, which Kent also laid out very kindly and objectively on the podcast. He didn't scream at him. But what he said is, if we are giving you $1 billion of funding for your defense, and we are helping you as your ally, and you are relying on us, we do get to dictate what you do, especially as it pertains to the use of our military for force in any region around the world that may not be in our best interest, the United States. And it needs to be made clear to a country like this, who is listed as an ally, that we dictate how this goes. There is nothing wrong with what he says there. That is, in any relationship, remove the names, remove the fact that these are countries we're talking about, in any relationship that occurs, that is how it works. Okay? If you run a fucking company worth $1 billion, you're the founder and CEO, you're paying some guy to manage I don't know, one aspect of the company. Does he get to tell you how you spend your money and where you put all your resources? Fuck no. If he does, he's gone. Suggestions are welcome. And I get to say, if I'm that CEO, I like it or I don't. If I like it, let's do it. Great. If I don't, we're not doing it. That's all Joe Kent's saying. And of course, he's taking a lot of flack. Like I said, of course, people are going to be like, oh, he's an attention whore doing all this stuff. And I hope none of that's true. He doesn't strike me that way. Never has. I got, he's a very conservative guy. I got some political differences with Joe Kent. I had heard him, not all of it, but I had seen some clips of him on Sean Ryan's show back in 2024 when he was on that. And he's got his perspective on things. That's great. But this is an American issue right here. We're talking about our guys going over there, and we've already seen caskets come home in flag-draped coffins. And Joe Kent has earned the right in every possible way to know a lot more about that and have a way bigger voice in the matter than someone like me or any of you out there who haven't served. Those of you who have served, I'd say the same thing as it relates to him. But he's got a damn well right to discuss that and discuss that with fervor. And he obviously stuck it out. He didn't resign before the war started. He didn't resign a day afterwards. He tried, but it had reached a point where it was clearly out of control. And you have to remember, Donald Trump, I don't say this as a shot, this is just a fact. This is a guy whose business strategy worldview was shaped by Roy Cohn, who taught him to always go on the offensive, never fucking apologize, and always show strength, among a couple other things. And Trump will do that no matter what. So, yes, and he's very entertaining in doing it. There's no doubt about that. That Pearl Harbor one the other day was killing me. That was one of the funniest. I almost shit myself when he said that in front of the Japanese prime minister. She didn't tell me about Pearl Harbor, okay? That was fucking... That was crazy. But privately, there have been a lot of reports, and I believe them, that he's flipping the fuck out about this. Because, there's been a lot of reports that, for example, they warned him about Iran being able to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what happened. And now he's upset about it. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes as it relates to Kharg Island. But, he also literally campaigned on no war in Iran, specifically. Yeah. No wars, but no war in Iran. And I guess broken clocks right twice a day. Kamala Harris, in her lines on the campaign trail, said, elect Trump, you're going to get a war with fucking Iran.
Yeah.
Hey, got to give it to her. Wow. She got that one right. So when you see that, it is very disheartening. Because objectively, when you look through the last administration, to say nothing of the fact that Biden wasn't even alive for all 4 years, just unelected administration in charge. You are talking about an administration that gaslit people on masks, gaslit people on vaccines, gaslit people on Ukraine, gaslit people on censorship, gaslit people on Afghanistan, gaslit people. I mean, the list goes, gaslit people on gender. The list goes on and on. Lies and lies and lies and lies and lies. That is objectively what it was. And as it pertains to this war, I see no difference between Karine Jean-Pierre and Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary for Biden and the current press secretary for Trump. It's lies. She lies like she breathes. It's like a redux to, Jean-Pierre was just fucking, it got to the point where it was hilarious. She would just lie like a mattress every day. And Levitt's doing the same thing. And right when Kent did this resignation, she went right into mode. She got caught. She said, the day before, and it was screenshotted and everything, she said, Iran poses no imminent threat to the United States, and then responds to Joe Kent's letter the next day when it comes out. Iran does pose an imminent threat to the United States. Get the phrasing right, if that's cool, Deef. I want to make sure I don't mess that up. I'm sure people can help me in the comments with that. But, that's a lie. And to defend Caroline Leavitt and Karine Jean-Pierre, You know, they're put in a position where they're told what to do, I guess, in that job, but quit the job. Karine Jean-Pierre wrote a book about it afterwards called like Middle Ground or something, why she's not a Democrat anymore. Don't do that for 3-4 years and then be like, yeah, no, I totally disagree with it the whole time, but I was happy to keep doing the job. Like, you know what you're signing up for. And then if it's way worse than that, maybe leave the job. And Levitt, you know, you should think about that. You got your whole life in front of you, kid. What's she, like 28, 29? Like, this is a very bad look. Very, very, very bad look. And so I was impressed with Kent. His letter, I want to make sure we read that on the record again. A lot of you have seen this, but can you just pull that up? I already got it. Dave's fucking on it, bro. I don't know how you keep track of all these fucking links. I give you like 70 million links. And
come on,
there.
Son. I'm Chinese.
All right.
Nah, I'm organized, you know. I just keep everything flush.
So this is from Joe Kent and the resignation of Trump. President Trump, after much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. 3 things there. Number 1, 10 years ago, someone ever says that publicly and never heard from again. Number 2, congrats on him for putting that right out at the front. And also, apparently, he had a private meeting with Trump where he discussed the resignation and said this as well to his face, which I really appreciate that. And number 3, once again, because Joe Kent has been on record about this in the past, and he made it clear again, I believe, the other night with Tucker. No one, including Joe Kent, is saying the Iranian regime is in any way good, that they're not tyrants, that they don't kill their own people, that we wouldn't love to see them all gone yesterday. That is not what people are saying here. What someone like Joe Kent is saying is that the world is a really fucked up place, and it's complicated, and there are 3rd, 4th, 10th, and 100th order effects of things. And as much as you want to be the police and help every fucking person who suffers around the world, and trust me, if you got a beating heart out there like me, you want that too. That is not the reality. Give you an example. Why don't we invade China? Because they're killing the Uyghurs. Because it's not smart. I hate that they do that. It bothers me. They do it to more than the Uyghurs too. They do a lot of fucked up shit over there. But you can't just go invade a fucking country with, you know, a $20 trillion plus GDP. And how, even if they're lying about it, however many fucking hundreds of millions of people they have. That's not how it works. So with Iran, yes, bad regime. Yes, never should have been put in charge. Yes, I hate what they do to their people. Yes, I have advocated publicly for their people to overthrow that government forever, including publicly since episode 129 with Jim fucking Lawler back in December 2022. Probably did it before then too, but that's the last one I can remember at the beginning. Like, yes, all these things are true. That doesn't mean you go prosecute a war with them because there are there are fucking strategic alliances here that are domino effects. Again, I think that's the 5th time I've used that term, that can make shit a lot worse. And as we're sitting here, we're going to pull up this NPR article in a minute to discuss Kharg Island, but we are sitting here dangerously. I don't want to say on the brink. I don't want to overly fearmonger here. I'd like to think we're still not at the cliffside, but we are slowly walking the plank towards the cliffside of a global economic crisis if we allow the largest place in the world where oil's fucking getting moved to continue to be moving at a standstill, mind you, settling any oil deals they do in Chinese currency rather than the dollar, which hurts. That's a whole, I don't even want to get into that. We got problems. And smart people foresaw these problems. People of average intelligence foresaw these problems. But our government's acting like they didn't foresee these problems. And now they are deploying Marines to the area. And also, when I do have to say this, when I see P. Hegseth, or as, oh my God, what's that dude's name? Kurt Mills, I think his name is. Shout out Kurt Mills. As Kurt Mills has called him Crystal Meth Rumsfeld. I think that's a perfect nickname. I hope I got Kurt's name right. He's on Twitter, but he was the one who coined that. I thought it was fucking awesome. When I see Crystal Meth Rumsfeld get up there and, you know, drop some fucking bar that he thinks is like Wu-Tang Clan-esque, whatever it is for the day. Like, you see the one the other day where he's like, we're sharing the ocean with Iran. We gave them the bottom half. Like, you know, he wrote that down and like looked himself in the mirror and was like, fuck you. God damn it. That's fucking great, Pete. Go get him, Higgs. And then come out there and say this stuff and then use the lives of the service members we've lost to say, oh, we've had a chance to talk with all the families and they've all told us to finish the job. When there are literal news reports of families I'm not saying this represents all families, but at least some of the families talking about how this was, quote, totally unnecessary and a war that I posted the video on my Twitter. You can go find it. I posted it multiple times. One of the airmen who died, the family went to the local news like, what the fuck? They created you can't just go create a war. It's unfair. And they're like, other families are suffering too. You know, some of these families feel that way. So don't propagandize their deaths like that. I mean, it feels like George Bush 3.0 here. Mm-hmm. All right? I got a real problem with that. And I do think in the commentary I've seen, like from Joe Kent so far, there's no one who has more respect and reverence for that than him. He's lived it. His wife died. Let's go back to this letter. So I left it off where he started in the second paragraph talking about Israel and its powerful American lobby. He then says, I support the values and foreign policies that you campaigned on, referring to Trump in 2016, 2020, 24, and you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. That's true. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS, which is something that Joe Kent had supported in the past, including back when it happened in January 2020. And that's something I've been critical of. Qasem Soleimani was a terrible guy. I mean, he's a terrible guy. World's a better place without him. But that was, at the time, a risky move where Iran ended up bluffing, so it worked out. But I was like, why are you poking the hornet's nest? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, bad guy, help fund terrorist groups, not happy, not upset that he's dead. But like, it's not that simple. That one worked out. What about the next one that doesn't? Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. He's referring to the neocons, effectively. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike there with a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times, and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation. So, first of all, to respond to people like Mark Levin and, you know, the very pro-Israel American media who's called this out and referred to it as anti-Semitic and stuff. Alan Dershowitz did that as well. He called Joe Kent a neo-Nazi. I tweeted about it. A neo-Nazi, Jew-hating something. That's defamation. There's nothing like that in here. He is referring to a lobby that is a legalized lobby, specifically AIPAC, who he does not mention by name, but lobbies that represent the interests of Israel, who provably, with a lot of money, have encouraged foreign actions here. There is nothing wrong with pointing that out. He is simply reading a fucking spreadsheet. All you got to do is read the money. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that. And fuck you for fucking saying that it is. You are only sowing more anti-Semitism across America and other places by doing that. And sometimes I really, as I've said before, I wonder if that's the point. It's gross. You can disagree with him. By the way, if you're Mark Levin, you are free to disagree with Joe Kent or Alan Dershowitz. You can try to beat him on the facts here. No problem. But don't do the labeling shit. That's beneath you. And honestly, I know Mark Levin and Alan Dershowitz, and those are two guys I'm picking on because they were publicly saying things like this about it. I know intellectually they're smart guys. Okay, that is below your intellectual line, and you know it. So stop it. But this was a big deal to see Joe Kent do this. And there was one clip I had in there that I texted you, Deef. You got it ready? So this was, I guess, yesterday, where Joe Kent went and spoke at some Catholics breakfast or something. I'm not really sure what it was, but I want to play a minute or two of this. And before I do, Deef, can you find a clip? Type in into Twitter, Scott Horton, Joe Kent, Syria or ISIS, and you'll find it. It's a minute or two. You got it? Okay. So I'll let you find that.
This one right
here. Yeah. So we'll have that ready to go. We're going to play two things right here real quick. Let's start with the first one. Boom.
This decision to follow your conscience, give us a little backstory. How did that happen?
Without getting too much into detail, I just did a long-form podcast with Tucker, kind of laid out the entire politics of the issue. But look, after serving 20 years, mostly deployed to the Middle East, fighting the wars over there, and just seeing how our country had been lied to and brought down the wrong path in those wars, and that we were getting sucked into another one, and that the American people didn't have the full story, and our country did not have a vital national interest in this current fight. I said, hey, I in good conscience can't do this, because that was a promise I made to myself probably 20 plus years ago when I was deployed to Iraq. Once I realized after my first couple deployments that we weren't there for the reasons that our government told us we were there for, I said, if it's ever my turn, if I'm ever an adult in this situation, I ever have a position of responsibility, I will not in good conscience send young men and women off to die on foreign battlefields.
Okay, pause it right there. That's all I need. Measured, dude. Principled. I don't see why. Again, you can disagree with him strategically. Yeah, this is America. That we can't discourage, even if it is something that a lot of us feel strongly about, which is we don't want to see another war. I know I feel strongly about that. I certainly have some bias in that department. It is a real red line for me. But we can disagree diplomatically. Attack him on evidence and merits, if that's the way you want to say it. Don't attack him on labels that are bullshit. Now, here's the clip with Scott Horton, because in the letter, Joe Kent refers to when his wife Shannon was killed in 2019. He refers to that as a war manufactured by Israel. His wife was killed in Syria, and the entire Syria situation, he actually laid that out in a lot of detail with Tucker, I believe. I hope I'm remembering that right. But this was a nice snippet right here from our friend Scott, where he kind of, again, without any prejudice or, even anger at talking about his wife fucking being killed, by the way, just lays out what the logic on that is. Let's play it.
Leaving Iraq in 2011, it was evident that we had basically handed over Baghdad to the Iranians. And so the Israeli lobby said, hey, this is a major problem, because now we basically have a Iranian superhighway, a land bridge that goes from Iran all the way into Syria through Iraq. This directly supports Hezbollah's efforts against Israel. So it was a major problem. And so we had basically tipped the balance of power in the region over to the Shiites. So then the dirty war in Syria was launched, because Hafez Assad and Bashar al-Assad had always been longtime friends with the Iranians, supported the Iranians, helped support Hezbollah and Hamas from Syria. And so who do we rely on as our proxies inside of Syria? Well, it was by and large the Sunnis and the most radical elements of the Sunnis. There was the Free Syrian Army, and there were some so-called moderates. But the guys who were out there and really aggressive against the Assad regime were members of al-Qaeda and then eventually members of ISIS. ISIS got so out of control that we eventually had to go back into Iraq, back into Syria, largely re-empower a lot of the same Shiite militias that we were trying to take power away from in order to take out the ISIS caliphate. That's where I lost my late wife, was fighting the ISIS caliphate. in 20.
Okay. So effectively, again, Bashar al-Assad, this is a story as old as time. Bad guy. No one's arguing that he was a good guy. No one's arguing that. If they are, I would disagree with them. He's a bad guy. But problem for Israel, in their opinion, and so they want regime change there. They have us get involved with setting up it was insane. It was like Mad Max Fury. It still is in Syria, but it was like Mad Max Fury Road where there was like 1,700 different groups fighting each other at some point. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't even wear uniforms. You're just shooting your friends. You don't even know who you're shooting. It was just insane what they set up there to create an untenable situation. The economic sanctions came in, turned it into a narco empire because that's how Assad basically had to fund himself. Joby Warwick's covered that before with me. I want to say we did that one in episode 198. It could have been episode 261 though. I think it was 261 because that was December 2024, right after the regime change thing was like going on over there. So might have done it in both. Either way, was not in our interest, and you see, and that's a quick explanation from Kent right there, but it created a bunch of other reverberating effects in the region that then one thing leads to another, which leads to another. So when he says his wife, who tragically lost her life in 2019 in a bombing in Syria, was in a war that he felt was manufactured by Israel, again, you can disagree with that, but there's some evidence there to say this was in the interest of Israel to create a severe problem in Syria and have the United States be involved. And again, we're paying you. You're not paying us. So actually, let me correct one thing there. You're paying our fucking congressmen and politicians. That's a separate issue. But country to country, we're paying you. And I understand Joe Kent's problem with that. Now, Kharg Island, which I've referred to. This is something Trump actually was on the record talking about in, I believe, 1988, saying he would take the island. Trump's always loved oil. Do with that what you will. Obviously, oil is a very important thing, but it's not as simple as just taking islands from other nations, including nations that are run by bad regimes, which Iran certainly is. But Kharg Island is interesting because I think in Arabic they say Kharg, but I don't want to be disrespectful and fuck that up. So in the English language, in my American dialect, I'm calling it Kharg. Kharg Island is located not in Hormuz, but inland, more towards northwest, I guess, up the Strait. Maybe D, if you can pull up a map real quick. And it has been responsible in the past for up to 90% of Iran's oil. How do you say this? It gets a little confusing how you do this. Oil productions, I guess the better way to say it is exports, because there's a few things here. Number one, oil tankers can actually dock around the island because the water is deeper, I believe, than it is towards the land.
Correct.
In other places. So it's a strategic location from a logistics perspective. It is also located very close to a bunch of huge offshore oil rigs that are responsible for a lot of the oil that Iran has access to. And it is a storage facility where they bring other oil, not just from those rigs as well. And then it's like the hub where then it goes out the Strait when it's not fucking closed and around the world. And it's responsible for maybe over 20% or something like that of the global world oil exports or whatever. Huge, huge place. Now, March 13th, I want to say, Trump bombs the island. He tweeted about it in a very strong way, or True Social about it, that he left the oil refinery or oil storage plants, pipes, intact and bombed all the military installations there and threatened to bomb the oil pipelines, which is a huge problem because he even said it in his maybe he's playing tough guy here. I hope that's all it is. But if he did that, he would inherently decapitate the future of the Iranian economy, regardless of who's in charge, for a long time. And he said that in his True Social post. He would decapitate it right there, which, okay, regime goes away maybe after that in some way when a bunch of other things happen, if that's how it played out and that was it. Well, now whoever takes over is taking over in an economic crisis and people can't fucking eat, just like now, and they're going to be pissed off. And who are they going to blame? Well, now they're going to look at America. They're going to look at Israel. And I'm going to get that.
China gets a lot of oil from there too.
China gets a lot of
They're
oil
not
from
going to
there
be
too.
happy.
Which, by the way, China had a spokesman come out like a week and a half ago. Because, again, like they're allied with Iran, but if there's one thing that's been interesting in all the stuff that's happened against Iran in the past 6 years, if you go back to Soleimani, they haven't gone out of their way to come in and do anything on behalf of their ally. China uses Iran for their oil. I'm not saying this can't change, and I'm concerned about this changing, but they don't seem to have a lot of respect for Iran. They just want to make sure that oil keeps flowing. That's where you're right, Deef. This could get bad, certainly, but like when Iran was responding to all the attacks in the start of the war by bombing U.S. bases in the other Arab countries in the Gulf, China called on them first to stop bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've called on everyone to stop bombing. I saw that. But at first it was just like, Iran, stop bombing. and I'm like, well, thank you. Okay, cool. But like, interesting that they started there. So if you wanted to propagandize an entire fucking generation, and if you wanted to piss off the Gulf states, which we can't get into that today, we'll have to do that on another podcast. That's a whole rabbit hole. Piss off the Gulf states more than you already have. Yeah, bomb the oil fucking pipelines on Kharg Island. Watch what happens. Go seize it for the United States moving forward. Watch what kind. Okay, economically, maybe if you didn't destroy the place, that would be a huge boon in the short term. But what does that do from a propaganda perspective for the next 2, 3, 4 generations? You're playing right into the Dick Cheney playbook. It's not as simple as like just go be the empire and fucking take. How did that turn out for the British over time? Not great. We should know something about that here. And I know it's not that simple, but I do my best with this stuff to at least look at it from 30,000 feet in the air and say, okay, choice A, choice B, choice C, choice D. Yes, there's really fucking 40 million choices right there. But if you could amalgamate a bunch of them into 1, 2, 3, or 4, that's what you're looking at. And with this one, I see a lot of reverberating effects that could come out of that. And it feels completely unnecessary. So at the moment, of course, based on everything I've heard, shout out to Joe Kent for standing for principles. I'm going to look to see what he does moving forward. Looks like he's going on like every fucking show. So you're going to get a chance to hear from him in a lot of different contexts. I know Sagar and Crystal were dropping one yesterday. So, you know, and it sounds like they talked with him about some different things that hadn't been talked about in the other interviews. But check out Scott Horton's. Definitely check out the one with Tucker as well. It was certainly impressive, regardless of what you think of Tucker. I don't know. People have different stances on him to the extreme out there and whatever, but like thought Tucker did a good job and it was a very, very informative sit down. And now I'm going to be watching to see what happens with Tulsi Gabbard because, you know, she's a lame duck.
Yeah.
I had already gotten, and fucking everyone on the internet with half a source had already gotten in the past 4 weeks that she's basically been kicked out of the decision room to this point. We knew it was confirmed back when the Venezuela strike happened that she was not allowed in the planning rooms for that. I don't think that's exactly a great endorsement of your fucking head of intelligence, but that's just me. And now one of her ultimate stances over the years, over the past decade and a half, which was no war with Iran, has been broken by the administration she works for. And she put out a statement that really sucked to see the other day, basically like supporting the president, but very interestingly, never saying that it was his, the way she worded it, it was the president is the one who determines the threats and has the authority to do that and makes those decisions. And that is what we stand behind. She never said, though, we determined the threat to be nuclear. We determined the threat to be that. She was and like, we know they don't have a nuke. All the intelligence is pointed to that, perhaps with the exception of the intelligence Tel Aviv decides to show the United States to get them to do what they want us to do, which Joe Kent talked about in that interview with Tucker. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Tulsi Gabbard stands on principles there. She's in a tough spot because here's why I say that. Even before Joe Kent resigned, now there's already been someone who beat her to it. That doesn't help. But like, if she stays, she's cowering below the principles she's always claimed to stand for. at the moment with something that's a big deal. It's a big red line for her. If she goes, people say, oh, she was just finding the politically useful track to, resurrect her career and change sides or whatever, and now she cut and run at the heart moment. It's a tough spot to be, but I do think the better choice, if this does not resolve itself and if she can't truly help play a role in helping this resolve itself so that lives around the world, not just our own here in America, can be salvaged, global economy can be salvaged, and the world can be pulled away from the brink of some very potentially dark shit. If she can't help with that, get the fuck out. Leave. I'll support you doing that. I think. I mean, there's always variables here, but based on what I'm seeing right now.
Be fair.
Yeah.
She's always been the one that's like supposed to be totally against it. So put your fucking money where your mouth is.
That's right. Now, I said we'd do it at the end here, so let's do it. Peter Thiel and our friend Jeffrey Epstein. There's been people starting to really dig through the files there. First of all, there's a video, Deef. I love this one. The first one where I have it confronted, where Thiel gets confronted on the street by this dude walking like a villain. I got to say it like that. He kind of looks like one. Power walking, if you will. And a guy comes up to him asking about the Epstein files. Here we go.
Comments at all on the Epstein connections?
Nope.
You were meeting with them?
Stays walking. You think he's just counting the lines in front of him?
People are waking up to what you're doing there, sir. That's why we're here covering this.
Step over the line. Where is he? What city is that? Somewhere in Europe. Yeah, he did that in Rome, close to the Vatican. All right, that's good right there. But good. Citizen journalism. He was respectful, kept his distance, and asked questions that the guy wouldn't answer. And, we're talking about a guy who, through the files of what we know so far, gave like somewhere in the neighborhood, Epstein gave somewhere in the neighborhood of like $40 million to, was talking with a bunch beginning in 2014, all the way up until a month or two before he was arrested, that being Jeffrey Epstein, in July 2019, and who clearly, we've talked about the target that Epstein clearly had on Elon to try to get him. Thiel was another guy he had a clear ooh, I got to talk to him. And it's interesting to hear Whitney Webb, the longtime researcher of the Epstein case and things beyond it as well, who, as I said last week, has been very vindicated by a lot of things in these files, for sure, and deserves a ton of credit for her books, One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1 and Volume 2. There's a lot of things that are provably, seemingly, there's a there on them. But she's talked about this in some recent interviews I've seen on clips on Twitter where she's like, there's no need for an Epstein these days, which could open up a whole rabbit hole. Like, did they finally say, well, we don't need him anymore, give him up? Maybe. But she's like, there's no need because you have a company like Palantir, which can just do everything that you used to need a human being to do. Go look into your tech data, suck up everything about you, and be the big brother, if you will. I don't know if she used that term, but that's what she's describing here. And of course, with Peter Thiel, we're talking about the guy who founded that company. So interesting to see Jeffrey make such a leap at him and also get his buddy, ex-Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, we've played that tape on a previous episode, to learn all about this company back in the mid-2010s and try to get a spot on the board, trying to wield their influence. But You already got it up here, Deef. This was a tweet I put out a week or two ago. Just, like a lot of you, I always use that term, 30,000 feet in the air, but you try to zoom out. You try to just see the paper trail. Just like the headlines, the money, and without going all the way down this estuary right here, trying to figure out every tree that's back there, and all the way down this one over here to do the same thing. Just look at the river itself and say, where's this motherfucker flowing? And when you see headlines from across a 3-year period, something like that, 3 to 5 year period. First one's 2017. Peter Thiel advises the president while Palantir plays shadow CIA. That's from the beginning of Trump's first administration. Next one. May 2024, Peter Thiel invests in Polymarket political betting platform, but the future of gambling on elections remains unclear. So they're trying to get everyone to gamble on everything in society. And this is while he's also playing shadow spy chief with his new company and cozying up to the administrations about it. Next one from August 2024. The U.S. will very likely fight a three-front war against Russia, China, and Iran. Palantir's Alex Karp says. I remember I did a live on that back in August 2024 and I fucked up the audio. So we never got to keep it up and everything. But like Alex Karp, who's a seemingly crazy person, the CEO of Palantir, certainly comes across that way in clips. You know, that New York Times, I believe it was, profile on him, which was really the first of its kind at that time. And now you see him everywhere. That's very interesting. Very interesting. They just like suddenly really came out of the shadows and kind of astroturfed himself into existence. That was a very telling expose about his psychology, who he is, what he's about, what drives him. And now you can see a lot of videos of him talking and hearing it as well. And he's certainly an unbalanced individual. But to call something like that and be in the moment we are right now, a year and a half later, that sends a little shiver up my spine. Next one, Dave. All right, this is from Wired in September 2025. The real stakes and real story of Peter Thiel's Antichrist obsession. So let's review here. We got him setting up a shadow CIA Palantir. We got him setting up, investing into the gambling infrastructure, which has really gotten out of control. And I support legalized gambling, but like everything else, seemingly, it's almost like there's a deeper Trojan horse there going on. But he's investing in the gambling side that involves politics, which also, you know, harkens back to, I don't know, September 11th, 2001, when some certain people were betting on stocks, airline stocks ahead of 9/11 surreptitiously. You got to wonder if now, when we see all these weird trades about predictions in the markets where people are making millions of dollars an hour before something happens, you got to wonder about the people in charge of that infrastructure. Then you got his CEO talking about a three-front war that would effectively be East versus West, with Iran as the proxy in the middle and fucking China and Russia on the other side a year and a half ago, and here we are. And then you got him talking about the Antichrist and going around and giving lectures in literally the shadows of the Vatican itself about what that is. And, you know, not a great PR look, but I see things like this and I see a guy who's off, to say the least.
To say the very least.
To say the very least. And who seems to have some long-standing, not great ties, and who, you know, for as smart as he pertains to be, or claims to be, talks about weird shit with Jeffrey Epstein. Can we pull up the Secret Society one?
Yeah, society.
This is an email from February 6, 2016.
And it's a whoops.
And someone puts whoops as the caption outside of it. It wasn't on email.
Okay.
But February 6, 2016, Jeffrey Epstein wrote, Peter Thiel loved, all caps loved, the Secret Society idea. He has done a lot of work on the concept, all failed so far. And then Redacted responds with a smiley face and says, let's do it. Done a lot of, Peter Thiel's in the Bilderberg group. He's done a lot of work on the concept, all failed so far. What were those concepts? What was he like? Was he just like, we're gonna soft launch it.
He always looks like he just snorted an 8-ball the night before too. Like his bags under his eyes. Like he's just been drinking and doing blow all night.
Yeah, for a guy who has apparently like such crazy health standards to the point that like his assistants send out all his dietary requirements.
I
like
don't
before.
believe that. I just can't believe like.
And like
he looks unhealthy.
Yeah, like minus his face, like he looks in shape, but like exactly. You look at his face and you're like, you're unwell.
Yeah. Like actually, it's like sweating.
But there was an article that Bloomberg put together that I Mike Bensed it for you, archive.is, that had a lot of interesting tidbits on it. They've been digging through the files as it pertains to Thiel, and they reach out to his people for comment. One of the things Thiel, and they all seem to do this, put out there through his spokesperson was that he was never on the island. Was never there. And apparently there's emails of him and Epstein going back and forth because Peter Thiel's like afraid of mosquitoes was worried about mosquitoes on the island, and Epstein claimed he's never felt a mosquito there in his life because he had the island like de-somethinged for, it was very weird, but mosquitoes, vaccines, that's a whole rabbit hole right there. We're not going to go there.
Well,
but,
hey, ticks, man. You see about ticks?
Oh, yeah, the CIA did
my
Lyme
buddy
disease.
Jay has been saying that for a long time.
Yeah. Now another one where there's a there.
Yeah.
But where Peter Thiel does not, as far as I could tell in this article, correct me if I'm wrong, deny going is Zorro Ranch. He doesn't deny going to the mansion. There were at least upwards of 10 meetings that included a 2015 meeting with a bunch of big acolytes that I think that one had Elon Musk in it as well, but don't quote me on that. What I also found in the article was that they were discussing what to me appears to be some sort of like insider trading about what was at the time a private company. This is where that's above my legal pay grade. I understood what insider trading was for public companies. That was like a part of what you learn at a bank, like, okay, you can't do this, can't do that, but private gets a little weird. He said, Epstein said, quote, in 2016, I'm being offered a chunk of Palantir at $5.5. Thoughts? And then Thiel replied, 5.5 a share? That's somewhat below, quote, market. He then added, I suspect you would be able to get an even better price sometime in the next 12 months. This is the guy who founded the company. It's a little strange. Again, private company. Maybe people at my legal people can help me out there. That was kind of weird. Palantir did not respond to a request for comment on that. Epstein offered Thiel connections to politicians and diplomats that included Bill Burns, who later became CIA director under Biden. And when the Wall Street Journal really did an expose on that back in 2022 or 2023, remained the CIA director. Nice. They're exposing 2014 meetings at the mansion with Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, yeah, no, he'll stay. Again, hubris. Lutnick quote. Lutnick gene, if you will. So that included Bill Burns, who was Undersecretary of State at the time, would later become CIA director, Anil Ambani, Indian businessman, politician, and heir to India's wealthiest family. Nothing to see there. And Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister. Burns has since said he deeply regrets. How many times have you heard that? Ever meeting with Epstein, a spokesperson said Burns said he didn't meet Thiel through Epstein and that he did not know anything about him before 2 meetings with Epstein more than a decade ago as he was preparing to leave the government. In one extended exchange, Thiel, this one was weird to me, Steve. Thiel and Epstein discussed the role of deception in evolution. The idea being that animal and human predators imitate the appearance or behavior of something else to gain an advantage in survival or mating. Reproduction, Thiel suggested, was possibly a, quote, deceptive strategy, unquote. Regular mammalian, if you will, reproduction he's talking about. Making copies, well, that could include other species, I should say as well. Making copies of oneself makes the odds better, equals that the predator gets only a copy and not you, Thiel wrote. Epstein responded that deception was a tool, quote, to protect or conquer free energy, unquote. In essence, quote, in essence, if the predator can read your algorithm, you are easy food. Deceptive self-confidence is also a winning game strategy. Is that what I think it is? Where they're talking about the implications of future cloning and transhumanism type ideas as it pertains to evolution and gaining a biological evolutionary advantage over fellow members of your species?
Listen, I ain't too good with numbers, but it sure sounds like it. Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting. We're going to talk more. Peter Thiel, I got some more on the bone there. We got to get into some Palantir stuff. I think we're at like 95 minutes so far today, so we got to cut it there. But next week, this was a short week because I was out of town for like 5 days. So, I think we got to a lot today, but there's obviously a ton going on in the world. That will continue to be the case. There is a lot more to dig through in these files, and we will do that, so keep it here. Stay subscribed. If you're subscribed, please subscribe if you haven't. Like the video. That is a huge, huge help. And thank you to everyone who has been sharing the podcast around on the internet. Yeah. That is the best help we can possibly get. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.